Welcome into a special broadcast on the field of 68. What a day in college basketball. It's September the 4th, but it is still quite the doozy in my neck of the woods in Memphis, Tennessee. I'm John Martin. He, of course, is Jeff Goodman. It's good to be back, man. We're still a month and a half out from live shows, but we'll have media day coverage coming up. But we're here today to talk about what happened in the city of Memphis and at Memphis specifically, Jeff, which is Penny Hardaway going into year 7, making sweeping changes with his staff. A month and a half out of the college basketball season getting underway. What do you make of the changes with the support staff and the assistants, including Rick Stansbury, all being out?
Yeah, Slick Rick gone after just a short time in Memphis. I thought it was kind of the dynamic duo down there because Slick Rick is known as one of the best recruiters really in the last 20 years. Mississippi State, what he did there. And obviously, since he got to Memphis last year, did a good job accumulating some talent late. But it's just shocking, John, because of when it happened. As much as anything, you're talking about early September making changes like this. And it obviously comes on the heels of an athletic director move. Ed Scott comes in from Virginia. So you put 2 and 2 together. Obviously, there's got to be something there with the new AD, whether it was a conversation with Penny, whether it was something that was Penny's choice or not. But again, you just don't see this. And now there's really one person on staff right now. Mike Davis is the only one. Assistant coach Jermaine Johnson stayed as well. There was a report that he was gone. Now he's back. So, again, it just raises more red flags about a program in which there have been plenty of red flags raised over the last few years.
Yeah, I think there are sort of 3 questions to work through as it relates to this story. One is, why now? I think that's maybe really important, and maybe it's the easiest one to figure out. But I think it also leads to the second question, which is, who made this decision? Was this a Penny Hardaway production only, or you mentioned the new administration? Was this an athletic director coming in, seeing a staff that is in all truth and honesty just really not good enough at this level? Is that what's going on? And third, I would ask, with Rick, who has done so much, for Memphis in this recruiting class specifically, what went wrong there? And all 3 of those questions might be related, Jeff, but I think those are the ones you're sort of operating on.
Just so much going on. Again, we could talk about, which I have, right? I mean, 2 years ago, I said it. I asked it to you and Randolph Childress and everybody. Is Penny Hardaway the right guy? Obviously, he's a hero in Memphis for what he's done, but that doesn't mean you're necessarily the right guy to lead a college program. I mean, Patrick Ewing was a hero at Georgetown. Chris Mullen, a hero at St. You can go on and on about some of these guys. Mike Woodson hasn't gotten it done at Indiana.
Right.
Now, I thought this might be the year that it changed for Penny because I feel like a lot of those former NBA guys, the big knock I have on them is like they don't work like a lot of the other, college guys. Well, when you throw NIL into the equation, it changes things. And Memphis has NIL or had NIL. Indiana has NIL. And you could sell the NBA and NIL. Like that's a hard thing to beat, right? And Penny got some players. I mean, listen, PJ Haggerty comes in with a big rep. I don't know how good he is because he was putting up numbers at Tulsa. They weren't winning a lot of games, but I think he's talented. Obviously, Hunter comes in and he's been at a few places and had success. And Dane Danger, talented, didn't play a whole lot at Illinois last year, but that was probably more towards the personnel. So they've got some talent there. But again, Penny hasn't won. He's won 1 tournament game in 6 years. Okay, I think Josh Pastner won 2 tournament games in 7 years, and he was fired. But he's Penny Hardaway, so he's going to get an extra long leash, and he should. He should. And I think everybody's rooting for Penny Hardaway, whether it's in Memphis, myself, whoever it is. I want to be wrong. I want to be wrong about this NBA thing with Penny Hardaway because I
Yeah.
like him and I want to see Memphis be relevant again. But winning one tournament game in 6 years is not nationally relevant.
No, it's not. And I think that, when we diagnose the reasons why Memphis has not been as successful as they should have been, over the years, I do think staff choice is going to be high on that list. And I think that's an important distinction to make here. Stansbury is the only guy who I would lose any sleep about. And, I just kind of know how Penny operates with these kinds of guys. We've seen him get sideways with big time recruiting assistants in the past, right?
Yeah.
And maybe that not always be kumbaya. I don't know if that was necessary. There was a reported rift, about 2 weeks ago. So I think there was some kind of division somewhere at some point. But I think in terms of the other staff members, you know, those guys probably should have never been hired in the first place. They were bad hires, they were bad choices. Penny has a tendency, as maybe a lot of coaches do, but a tendency to surround himself with people that just agree with him. And anybody that sort of challenges his conventional wisdom, they get thrown out, or maybe never even get the chance to show up. So I don't think people are upset so much, Jeff, about the names and the coaches involved exactly. It's more about why, it's September the 4th. You know, it was obvious that you probably needed to make these moves,
A while
on March the 4th, or certainly the 24th. So
And this is a
what
make or break year. This is
exactly?
the year that's going to really determine which way this program goes under Penny Hardaway. Because if they don't make the tournament, let's face it, it's probably
Yeah.
there's a good chance it's his last year as
Yes.
the head coach. But
Yes.
he does have the talent. They did have the financial resources to put together a team that should be one of the top two or three teams in the AAC. Now, again, if you
I
look,
mean, if they can't be top three in the AC, brother, I mean, just shut it down.
that's what I'm
Just shut
saying.
it all down.
I mean, it's a mid-major league right now. It's turned
Yeah,
into a mid-major league now that
yeah.
FAU isn't the FAU that we thought they were gonna be, right? Houston's been gone for a year. They should be running this league, in all honesty. They should be running this league
Running
right now.
away with it,
Right,
if
right.
we're being honest.
And their record in the last 3 years in the league is 37-17. Like,
Not
that's
good
not
enough.
good enough in the AC.
No way.
You told me in the Big 12, yeah, like
No
great.
doubt. You're dominant.
Right, right. But and getting back to your thoughts on the staff and having yes men, um, I remember talking. I did a story a few years ago on former NBA guys and going through every one of them and the success. And really, no one was a home run at that point. Like there were no
Yeah,
A's. I gave letter grades, and I don't think I gave an A to anybody at that point. But
right.
Damon Stoudemire, now at Georgia Tech, he was with the Celtics at the time. He made an interesting point to me. He said, "A lot of us, we have such egos coming from the NBA. We think we know everything,
Yeah.
and we've been successful. I mean, there's a reason, right? Penny Hardaway, super successful before he got hurt in the NBA. Damon Stoudemire, success. Like they've all been successful for the most part, and their ego gets in the way sometimes, and
Absolutely.
they don't know who to hire. I mean, I remember Isaiah Thomas when he got hired at FIU. His staff was a train wreck. He didn't know, so you're relying on like one guy, and a lot of times these guys aren't listening, doing a
Mhm.
great job of listening. Like Mike Miller, when Mike Miller came on, like my sources all told me, like, hey, Penny wasn't listening to Mike Miller. So that thing went sideways. And Mike Miller probably said, the hell with it. Why am I going to coach under this guy? I want to learn. I want to have an impact. I want to have a voice. And if you're not, you're thinking to yourself, especially if things aren't going that well on the court, what am I doing here?
No question. And Mike and Penny were probably. I mean, Mike wasn't going to be long for anybody, as an assistant, right? I mean, that just was star-crossed lover type stuff. But again, there have been a lot of hires that have come through, like Larry Brown.
I mean, I'm going to
You'd
go
have to
through
name.
10
Yeah,
guys. 10 guys are gone as assistants in that those top three spots in 6 years. 10 guys. So
Yeah.
Stansbury, Phillips, Borman, Cody Topper was there for a few years, Larry Brown, Rasheed Wallace got a cup of coffee. Forgot about that one. Tony Madlock got a head job at South Carolina
Yeah.
State.
That was yeah.
Yep. Jermaine Johnson is back, but he was gone.
Yep.
Sam Mitchell was brief, and Mike Miller. 10 guys. I
Yeah.
mean, that's a lot. That's up there
It
probably
is.
as high a number as there is in the high major ranks probably over the last 6 years.
Well, and you would know better than me, but I remember I made this point when Borman was gone and when he decided to leave or get fired or whatever the case may be. You look around at the top programs in America, which, believe it or not, Memphis has been before and
Yes.
would like to be again, at least in that discussion. And you look at top programs in America, and one of the common denominators in a lot of these spots, Jeff, and you know this, is that whether it's Kelvin Sampson or it's Matt Painter or it's Dan Hurley, I mean, you pick a guy. If it's T.J. Otzelberger, odds are they have a guy that has been with them for 3, 4, 5 years. Of course, you want your assistants to go on and become head coaches, but there are lots of guys that have been in these programs for multiple years that or they move up, right? Kelvin Sampson had a guy that started, as a video coordinator. It's been with him for 7 years or even longer, maybe since he started at Houston. And now he's an assistant coach that comes up in the program that has been in the trenches. And that is one area that Penny has never been able to identify. Now, part of that maybe is you're going for these bigger names, but he's just really had a hard time identifying that in the trenches guy so that when you do inevitably hit a rough patch in your season, you can look at that guy. He's been there with you before and you can get out of it together. Instead, it almost kind of feels like Penny isolates himself. And I think that's a big weakness.
And they know too who to recruit. Like that's part of it also. Like it takes some time to understand what type of player works with a head coach. And if you're only there, that this is your first year. Now this year, again, the team's already in place.
Yep.
So if I'm Penny Hardaway now, like if you're Penny Hardaway now,
Mm-hmm.
don't you go out and get the best X's and O's guy you can find. Don't you get the best guy that you think can develop and get this team from point A today, because you've only got now, preseason, it's starting soon.
Yeah,
They're
I
all on
mean, the
campus.
hay's in the barn there. Yeah.
Right. So like to me, I wouldn't even bother. Like I'm not getting a recruiter now. I'm going and getting and look at what
Yes.
Nate Oates has done. Perfect example. Like he's lost a bunch of guys to head jobs over the last couple of years.
Yeah, I mean, that's a good example of there's been some turnover there, but they found a way to make it work.
You know what he does? He's hiring NBA guys. He's got an offensive coordinator and a defensive coordinator. He brings them in from the NBA and he says, you know what? I'm going to go get the players along with Preston Murphy, and I'm going to hire 2 dudes from the NBA that
Mhm.
know the league, that can really coach, and I'm going to give them the reins and let them coach. Do what they do.
Right. They go to the Final Four.
Yeah.
That's all. All they do is good. And by the way, I mean they were tied with UConn. They played UConn as well as anybody did in the tournament, including Purdue. You know, and I think that's a big part of it is, whether you run field of 68. Ideally, if I'm not tripping all over my words, I'm able to come on here and help you with the network. You know what I'm
Yeah.
saying? And you let me do that. You hire people to help
You got
you
to
do
trust them.
your job and make it easier.
Right.
That's the goal. And I think for whatever reason, and Penny's not the first coach that's been like this. And guess what? He's not going to be the last. But the goal I think in any field is to bring people in who help you do your job a little bit easier and make life easier for you. And I do think that's a part where you struggle. Now let's talk real quick about what's next for Memphis. Part of what made this possible, Jeff, this move so late in the calendar, is that they know exactly who they're going to hire. They're hiring Nolan Smith. They're going to promote Mike Davis, who was brought in as a consultant, and they're going to put him on the bench. And then they're going to do one of 2 things. They're going to either give that 3rd spot to Jermaine Johnson, or they're going to give it to former Tiger from that 85 team, Andre Turner, who was brought in as a director of player relations. So that is what enabled him to do this move in September. And I'm just curious what you make of all of that.
So if I'm Nolan Smith, and I know Nolan well, I've known him, covered his recruitment years ago. So I know Nolan well. He's coming off a situation in which he left Duke to go to Louisville, and it was a complete train wreck, like as bad can be. If you're Nolan Smith, are you going to get aboard another train that could be a train wreck right now? Like, you've got to make the right decision for you. I know you're out right now. I know you're out
Right,
and you want to work,
right.
but if you make another poor decision for your career, that could be the last of your opportunities at the high major level for a while. So I don't think this thing
That's
should be
interesting.
a slam dunk. If I'm Nolan Smith, I'm still, I think a lot of people would think like it's a no brainer. He's got to take the job
Uh-huh.
if he's offered it. And this has been
Yeah.
rumored since what?
June.
June?
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
June. I mean, so also if I'm Nolan Smith, I'm thinking, why has this taken so long? Like, what is going
Yeah.
on at this place? Um,
And there are other
just
considerations. There are other considerations beyond just we haven't even touched on them, but we are
right.
still waiting on some shoes
Yes.
to drop with,
Yeah.
investigations.
Yep. Yeah,
So,
there's some other stuff going on, academically that's being, looked into within the Memphis program right now, according to my sources, and I'm sure yours as well.
yep.
We know full well, and it makes it a tough situation to go into. Again, if you've got number one, other opportunities, or number two, if you're Nolan Smith and you're scared of like, hey, I can't make another mistake. I made one going from Duke to Louisville. I cannot make another one. That might be career suicide.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think that's a very valid point, and I'm sure, that is a consideration for him. And you don't want to get that reputation as you join these downtrodden programs and they just go further into the dumps. I
How
think
good
that's
do you
definitely
think this
something.
team? How good do you think this team will be? Because on paper, I mean, again, you have money. Now I've
Yep.
heard again, according to my sources, the money isn't some of the boosters aren't on board as much as they were, which rightfully so. I mean, that happens
Yeah,
when you spend the money and
absolutely.
you start out what 15-2 last year, and you're in I think I had them in the top 10 at that point,
They were
and then
top
they
10 in the
tailspin.
AP.
Yeah, yeah,
I mean,
they tailspin. They don't make the tournament. They finish,
yep,
I think, I don't know, something like 7-7 to finish the season or something like
yep,
that.
yep.
So, the boosters, the big money people are going to be frustrated. Is this the right guy? Am I going to empty my pockets for a guy that I'm not sure is right for the job? So, where do you stand with this team? Like, what do you think they end up doing this year? Because there's so much going on right now
Yeah.
around the program. Is Penny able to handle all these distractions, all the naysayers, and deal with it?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's hard to put out last season from your mind. Um, the numbers love this team. I mean, it's beyond me,
Really?
but they do. I mean,
Ken Palm?
Torvik's Ken Palm's numbers aren't out yet, but Torvik's got them at 25 in the country,
Wow.
and he's got them as a top 20 offense. And you know, look, I respect the hell out of Bart Torvik. I think he's great. I swear by his. He was right about Memphis last year when everybody had him in the top 10. He had them in the 80s, and everybody's like, "Yo, what are you doing? What is?" And he ended up being. He probably wasn't right enough with them at 80, right? So he has a very good track record with this stuff, but I just don't know what assumptions he is quite making. I like a couple of pieces. I like Tyrese Hunter. I
Me
like
too.
Dane Danger. I like those guys coming over. What I have a question about is okay, PJ Haggerty is clearly your best player. He was a leading shot getter on a horrible Tulsa team last year.
Yeah.
That doesn't really mean that much to me. And he only played one Power Five team last year, and that's being generous in Oklahoma State, and he struggled, and they lost by 1 million. And so I just always question Jeff when you're taking big jumps like that, which that's what they're playing UConn in the Maui. They're playing Clemson at
Even their
Clemson. They're playing
first game.
Virginia.
Listen, even their first game. I know Missouri was awful last year, but
Yeah,
you're opening against a high major program that is
absolutely.
pissed off, embarrassed from a year ago.
100%.
Like, that's dangerous.
So long story short is that I just don't, I'm not a believer. I mean, how can you be? They were 15-2 last year and number 10 in the country, and they found a way to not make the tournament. I mean, I get it. I can see it if it maybe all comes together, Jeff. But given all the uncertainty with the coaching staff, given the fact that you flipped your roster for a second straight season, I'm just going to err on the side of caution and stay on the sidelines when it comes to thinking this team is a tournament team. And honestly, for Penny's sake, hope to be proven wrong.
Yeah, I mean, again, to me, you kind of know where I stand with these former NBA guys. I haven't liked the hires in the past. I hope I'm wrong with Penny, and I hope he flips it this year and they do well. But again, this is just the latest sign of a program that right now doesn't have a lot of stability. I mean, that's fair to say. They are not a stable program right now.
Exactly.
And the question is, you know, is the talent good enough? Is the coaching good enough to be able to get it? Should be, because again, you're in the AAC. Like,
Yeah.
even with all our question marks, like, who are you really fighting? Who are you scared of right now in the AAC? Like, they should win. They have, think about how much more money they had to spend NIL wise
Oh,
than
it's a
whoever
joke.
was second
It's a
in the
joke.
AAC.
It's like the difference between Alabama and Vandy and SEC football.
Yeah,
I mean, it really is.
it's not
I mean,
close. Right, right.
so, you really have no excuse.
None. Zero. Zero. They should come out of that league, even if they come out of the non-league with a bunch of losses, which they might. They could end up. I
Right.
mean, again, I give
Yeah.
Penny credit. I give Penny credit for that one. Like, he played some people in the non-league. Now, maybe he knew he had to try to get an at-large bid, and he's saying to himself, even if I go, 7-5. I don't know how many games they have. They probably have 11. So let's say,
Right.
they go 6, 8 and no, they won't. They'll go 7-4. Let's say they go 7-4 in those
Yep.
11 games,
Yep.
or 6-5. You can still say, like, hey, we can run through, win the regular season, win the tournament, get the automatic bid, just destroy teams. But we
Exactly.
saw it last year. I mean, when they lose to Rice, they barely beat Tulsa. They're
Yep.
they're having trouble. UTSA, I think they had trouble with last year.
Yeah. Barely beat him at home.
Right. So, like, I just don't know if anything is going to be easy for this team this year.
Yeah, it's not going to be easy. You're flipping the roster, and that's just historically not a recipe for making the NCAA tournament. But that's going to be the question for Memphis basketball this year. Can the talent overcome the chaos? And we'll all be watching. We'll all be watching. Hey, Field of 68 is going to have media day coverage starting next month. The college basketball season is going to be here before we know it. In the meantime, Jeff, good to see your face again, man. Good to catch up.
Likewise, likewise. I'm on the road here, Austin, Texas, but nothing better than a day to see John Martin's
There you
beautiful
go.
mug.
There you go.
So
The countdown to college basketball is on, and we'll be seeing you guys soon enough. Thanks for watching here on the Field of 68.